Carina MacKenzie, welcome to An Actor Spares. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thanks. I mean, fine relative to how everything is going in the world, I guess.
Yeah, touche. Where are you quarantining?
I'm in Los Angeles right now. I just moved, so I
Oh,
moved in the middle of all of this, and it
where,
was moved
where,
twice actually.
wait, where from and where to, and then where, and now obviously to LA again.
So I just within LA, I moved from Hancock Park, and now I'm in the Valley, and
Oh,
just got a new place because I realized nothing like quarantine to make you like realize what you don't like about your own home.
yeah.
But I
Well,
also, during this process, had to move out of my place in Santa Fe, which is where we shoot Roswell.
wow.
Um, and that was like an adventure. I mean, I was like driving 12 hours back and forth, like trying to avoid using gas station bathrooms, wiping every single box down, like letting the cardboard air out. It was
Oof.
so
Oh man. Well, I'm so sorry you had to go through that, but
fun.
oh man, I'm such a big
Good problem
fan.
to have, healthy.
Well, I'm such a big fan of you and of what you've been able to do as a showrunner, as a producer, as a creator, as an incubator. I mean, starting with the Flash. That was kind of your first foray. Is that correct? And then
No, the originals was the first thing I
oh,
did.
so the originals before the Flash.
Yeah, in the
Okay,
middle of my run on the originals, I popped off and did a Flash episode.
got it. But now you have the smash hit Roswell, which is like an incredible show, especially for a show that's on CW. Dealing with like the racism and the LGBTQ and the immigration. It's like not easy to make that so naturally part of that environment without political, but the realism and naturalism of that is amazing. Specifically for a show that has to fit on that medium. And I'm so curious to talk to you about that. But before we even dig in, let's start from the beginning. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut.
Okay.
Yeah, I went to public school and had two sisters. My dad worked in New York City, and I always I feel like I have like an origin story, like my like terrible superhero origin story. I was a really shy kid. I was like one of those people. I just like felt like every time I talked, I was too loud, and so I should shut up.
Yeah.
And but I grew up. My mom's Muslim, my mom's Egyptian, my dad's Canadian.
Wow.
I grew up like going to Islamic school as a kid, and then after 9/11, I experienced a lot of Islamophobia, mostly because kids around me didn't know what
Yeah.
they were talking about, and then didn't know that I was Muslim. And I came out of my shell a lot, so I kind of had to stick up for myself and stick up for my family, and that's sort of the beginning of the story, because I don't think anyone who knows me now would describe me as shy or quiet in any scenario.
Of course.
And that really evolved from being 14 and having to stand up to people like teachers and other kids at school.
Wow. So even
and,
teachers were being nasty.
um, it's funny because I look back on it now and I'm like, people just didn't understand, and people were so scared and so misinformed
Yeah.
by the news and the
Yeah.
president.
Yeah.
Um, and
Bush
and
did
so
a good job of that.
yeah, I don't think it was about nastiness so much as it was about a lack of understanding and a real fear.
Yeah.
And it's easier to understand that now as an adult versus when I was 14 and I was like, why is the world against me? I didn't do this thing.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
But it gave me a voice. It gave me like a cause or a point of view, and made me realize that even when I was uncomfortable speaking up, my voice had value. And I think that, look, if I could go back in time and undo 9/11, obviously I would do that.
Yeah.
but I also think that because of that terrible event, I wouldn't be who I am or where I am now. I have no idea who I would be, but it would be a completely different person.
I'm a drug addict and alcoholic, 4 years sober. And obviously I wish I could undo that, but I wouldn't be who I am. So I identify with making the best out of a really bad, so that's it's so
not like, yay, 9/11. So
yeah.
I come out of my shell.
But hey, we should create that show, Yay 9/11. I feel like it would do really well right now.
Very popular.
But talk to me then, because that's a really heavy thing to deal with very young, especially like I can't even, I mean, obviously just on a superficial glance, I could understand how no one would ever think that's part of you or your culture or your heritage. So what were your coping mechanisms? Like, talk to me about the artistry and TV. Like, were you,
I think
what, what was helping you?
I think that sort of disappearing into a world of TV was definitely had its appeal. It's funny, my mom now, I wasn't really allowed to watch a lot of TV as a kid. We were allowed like very supervised television watching. My mom's pretty strict. She didn't think she was, because she had grown up in a very strict Muslim household, and so she felt like she was like just
the hippie
mother ever, because we got like 1/2 an hour of Sabrina the Teenage Witch every week.
the Melissa Joan Hart days.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was right.
I wasn't allowed to watch Dawson's Creek.
Wait, why?
Because there was a Rolling Stone article that said that this is this new TV show where teenagers speak frankly about sex, and it was like, well, that's not airing in our household. But I was obsessed with it.
Same with the OC, or?
The OC came a little later. By the time the OC was on, my parents had split up, and I was allowed to watch it.
Okay, cool.
But with Dawson's Creek, I didn't watch it really while it was on, but I did. I bought the box sets when they came out, and I would like lock myself in a room and watch these DVD box sets. And my mom tells people today, like, she thought something was wrong with me because I would watch these things over and over and over again. She was like, why can my kid watch, like, is she on the spectrum? Like, is everything okay? Is there's some emotional thing going on? Because she just keeps watching the same episode of television over and over. And even then, at like 15, I was like, I'm doing research.
That's amazing. Well, I got to ask, just because I know that was such of the time too, was Boy Meets World at all a part of your like Rolodex of shows?
Yeah, I watched Boy Meets World. There was like the TGIF stuff was the stuff I was allowed to watch.
Got it.
So it was like Boy Meets World, Sabrina the Teenage Witch. There was an Olsen twin show on for a while.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
I was like, there was like a Friday night block. We would order pizza, and our whole family would watch these shows together, like me and my sisters and my parents. And that was allowed. But like, I didn't watch Buffy. I didn't watch Charmed. That was all stuff I wasn't allowed to watch as a kid. I did used to sneak down to my basement. We had like this kind of finished basement with one of those old TVs with the antennas. And I would sit there with my hand on the plug and like listen for when my mom would come down the stairs and unplug the
no way.
unplug the TV when she came down and just like pretend I was down there reading. Anyway, I always say, like, if my mom had just let me watch television like a normal kid, I would be a fucking rocket scientist by now. But I go into TV because I'm a rebel and this is my, grand rebellion. She did ease up, to be fair. She's cool now.
If you can remember, what was it about Dawson's Creek that seemed so alluring and fascinating to you? Was there something that depicted in a way you hadn't really seen before, or was it?
It wasn't about that I hadn't seen it before. It was just that it looked so much like my life. If you looked at my backyard, it looked like Dawson's backyard. And I felt like I was like the gawky, nerdy girl who everybody was friends with, but like didn't think of as like sexy. And I felt like I was being so represented by that show, which is easy because I was a white kid growing up in an affluent suburb and, on the East Coast. And so it just goes to show you how much representation means to you. And for me, it was everywhere. I mean, I could see myself in Rory Gilmore. I could see myself in, like, Felicity. But it meant so much to me to sort of be like, this looks like my life.
Yeah.
And it's a little glossier and a little prettier and a little bit more, Dawson's Creek better. It was very well articulated.
So would you say in some ways that was kind of your first cathartic experience, just because you related to it on that intensive a level?
I think so. I think so. I think it was a little bit less cathartic and more like idealism, a little bit.
Got it. Okay.
A little bit of an escape.
Were you Team Dawson or Team Pacey?
So looking back, I'm like, Team Pacey forever. But like the way that I watch TV is very different, I think, from a lot of people, because I get fans of my entire career. I've had fans in my mentions being like, I like this guy or this guy, and like if this relationship doesn't end up together, then there was
he's
no
out. He's out.
That's not how I watch television. Even as a kid, I was always kind of rooting for whoever they weren't with right now. Like I always wanted to watch the evolution and to see the change. And Kevin Williamson described it really well. Because I used to be a journalist, and he was he was the first person that I interviewed as a journalist, and I was such a big fan. He wrote Dawson's Creek, and he described that feeling of sweaty palms and wobbly knees. And that's what I love to watch, was that sort of sense of like the first time and the nerves and the like the sweaty palms of first love. And that was what drew me in to TV. And I think that I still, even though I'm writing about adults now, I still try to capture that feeling of sweaty palms. And
you definitely
romance.
do. Yeah, I love that. That's so beautiful. And then in high school, did things, I hope, ease up for you a little bit more? You know, you said your parents split up. Like, were you able? What were you watching then? I guess I'm trying to ask, where did the imperative of like, I think I want to, you know, I know you were a journalist at first, but I think I really want to like go further into this path?
I think that my entire life I wanted to be a writer. I don't remember a time when I didn't want to be a writer, so it's really hard for me to like, you know, pinpoint a time. And the way that I've wanted to write has evolved for a really long time, like a lot over the years. When I was in high school, I was writing a lot of short stories. I took creative writing independent studies at school. Like I instead of having open periods when all the other kids would be like, you know, driving and like get a milkshake or whatever, I like filled my time with creative writing independent studies. And won some like little awards and stuff for writing short stories. When I went to college, I was a poet. I really had this idea of like growing up and being a poet and publishing poetry books. And I still want to do that. I just also really like money.
Hey, I get it. Where did you go to school? What writing program drew you in?
I went to the University of Colorado.
Okay, amazing.
When I was in high school, I was a competitive skier, and I wanted to ski, not competitively, but I wanted to go to school where I could ski. So I only applied to schools in Vermont and Colorado.
Wow.
And I went to Colorado with like a pack of boys from my ski team, my high school ski team. So I like showed up in Colorado with like 5 dudes from high school that were like my bodyguards.
Oh, so you already had like a friend group.
Yeah. I a friend group and like an armor, which I think hurt me a little bit. Like I'd gone to was in the same school system my entire childhood.
Yeah.
Went to college with built-in group of friends, and I never had to start over. I never had to make friends by myself.
Yeah.
Until I moved to LA, which was scary. But when I was in college, I was very artsy. I used to like get up early and go like chalk poems on the sidewalks on campus. Like it was like part of my whole shtick was like,
wow,
read them as they walk to class. I was very pretentious.
I love that. I'm very pretentious. I went to NYU, so I went to school with 3,000 of you. So I love it.
NYU was my dream. I actually, when I was a sophomore in college, applied to transfer, and then kind of got cold feet and was scared of like
building over.
And ended up staying in Colorado. And I'm glad I stayed in Colorado because I don't think that I will ever have that experience again of like, you know, University of Colorado at Boulder is beautiful. It's like on the side of a mountain and it's very chill. It was like one of the top party schools, and I'm very type A. I'm not a very chill person.
Yeah.
So I think that sort of forcing myself into this, like, I'm going to the football games, I'm smoking weed, and I'm like, you know, going skiing after class. I actually think, weirdly enough, it was very good for me because it wasn't this constant rat race of competition, which I probably will be in for the rest of my life.
But you're doing an amazing job. I got to ask you, though, being a writer there, I mean, obviously, were you aware of the legendary Matt Stone and Trey Parker and what they did, or was that still?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it was like, they made Cannibal the musical, right? And then it was like
Uh-huh.
Orgasmo, and then they
Yeah.
got South Park.
Yeah, they were
Yeah.
very legendary, and South Park was, for a bunch of stoner kids at University of Colorado, it was like the gospel.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
and I think it's funny because I took like a couple of screenwriting classes, nothing really substantial, because University of Colorado, the film program was really small. So like my screenwriting classes were classes that I took in the like adult learning program that you had to like apply to, and they were like night classes. But I had a professor who I turned in a draft of a feature, and he was like, "You're a very good writer, but you're not funny." And I was like, "Huh?"
Dick.
And he was like, "Yeah, just stick with drama. Don't try to be funny. You can feel your try." He kept telling me I could feel how hard you're trying to be funny. And I was like, "Fuck, I think I'm funny." And now I look back and I'm like, "Well, you obviously were like a world, an award-winning screenwriter, teacher of a night class in Colorado."
Yeah.
But it really got to me. And so I had this like when it comes to like people like Trey Parker and Matt Stone, it was like these are these comedy legends that came out of this town, and like I'm not funny.
One of the reoccurring things I talk about with artists and guests on this podcast is finding your voice, whether that be in writing and acting and directing, or, for musicians, it's tone, it's style. For you, it's a mix of all those for writing. Do you feel like that kind of took shape at Boulder, or it wasn't until you moved to LA where you really started to form your voice?
Yeah, no, it wasn't. It was more when I moved to LA. And I think that figuring out what my voice was as a person like speaking, had a lot to do with it. Twitter weirdly had a lot to do with it. In that sense of like, I was on Twitter very early. And just the other day I tweeted something along the lines of like,
You also hire writers off Twitter, don't you?
I have hired a writer off of Twitter, and I was hired off of Twitter.
Wow.
By Julie Pleck and I met over Twitter, and she changed my life. And so that sort of like, it was back in the 140 character days of like, you've got this much space to either say something meaningful or to be funny. And
what did you do both, or?
I tried. Yeah. Sure.
I gotta find these tweets.
but I think that like that sort of sense of creating a brand for yourself and like putting yourself out there constantly. I wanted to be a writer, and so I wanted to. At the time, I was a journalist. I was writing about TV, and I wanted eyes on my work.
Zap to it, right?
Yeah. So I started at the LA Times, and then I went to Zap to It and did a few pieces for like Teen Vogue and stuff like that. But Zap to It was mostly it, and that site doesn't even exist anymore. So all of those things are gone.
Well, so then was it the job that brought you to LA versus making you just decide to go to New York City? Or did you just want to go to LA?
I love TV. When I was in college, my first, like the thing I kind of wanted to do and still kind of want to do is be a music supervisor. What I didn't realize is that being a music supervisor is one of the hardest jobs to get in television, because there's like one music supervisor who covers like 10 shows. So there are very few positions available. And I also realized like kind of late in the game that it wasn't just about like, I make really cool iPod playlists. Like, to be a music supervisor, you have to have your finger on the pulse. Our music supervisor, Chris Malaire, who I love and have worked with on the originals and now on Roswell, and hopefully will work with forever and ever. He was like, doing college radio, and like he goes to went before the quarantine, went to shows like literally multiple times a night. Wow. And I was like, oh, that's a lot. But I loved music, and so I wanted to get into my first thought was I want to choose the songs for TV. And that was like during, the OC was over, Grey's Anatomy was sort of in its heyday. It was like music on television was making this comeback. A sort of a jukebox show was making a comeback with needle drops, and I loved that. So that
especially like how the OC wrote music performances and launched fans in the show.
Yeah, yes, so many.
Like Death Cab and
The Killers, like Mr. Brightside, like that's huge. I wanted to do music, and I don't have a lot of musical talent myself, but I wanted to place music in TV. That was my goal. So I came out here. I packed my Prius up in Colorado and drove out here after I graduated, and with no money, and stayed with a friend, and like had a couple shitty assistant jobs. Not that the jobs were shitty. I was just a shitty assistant.
The hard thing to be good at.
Not built for it.
Yeah.
And I ultimately found myself writing TV recaps. I had a day job as a PA, and then I was writing TV recaps for the LA Times, and they paid $100 a recap. So that time I was making so little money as a PA that in doing one show a night for the LA Times, I could quit my job as a PA. And I slowly transitioned from writing recaps. Julie Plec and Kevin Williamson read one of the recaps of the Vampire Diaries that I wrote. And they reached out to me on Twitter. And they were like, we just read this recap or this review that you wrote, and we finally feel like someone understands what we're trying to do. At the time, they were like the Twilight knockoff. And I kind of written and been like, here's what's great, and here's what's new about this show, and here's what's better than Twilight about this show. And they were like, oh, finally somebody sees what
understands us. I love that
story of two brothers that we're trying to tell. And they reached out and they were like, who are you? And then ultimately I got to do a couple interviews with them for the LA Times, and then Julie asked me to dinner. And like I said, Dawson's Creek was my life. Yeah. And I did not know that Kevin Williamson was coming to this dinner. We went to Katsuya in Hollywood, and Julie and I were chatting, and then Kevin sat down, and I was 22. I just kind of told them my life story, and we talked about the show and about TV. And the end of the dinner, Julie said, you're in the wrong business. You should be a storyteller. And I was like, I liked my job. I liked writing about TV. I really did. And I, at the time, being a television writer seemed so insanely out of reach to me, just because it's a hard job to get into. It's, you have a million insecurities and imposter syndrome and all of those things. And I have this professor in my head who tells me I'm not funny. And I just, it seemed like a very scary leap to take. And it was 5 years before I did it. It was like, she told me that at dinner, and it was another 5 years before, actually, from another nudge from her, finally got me to quit my job as a journalist and go after what I really wanted.
And while you were at the Times, were you writing screenplays at all, or ideas, or?
I wrote one pilot with my roommate Tierney Bricker, who is still an entertainment journalist. She works at E-Online, and she's phenomenal. We wrote a pilot called The Sealy, about essentially a coven of fairies, a bunch of teenagers who don't know that they're in this coven of fairies, and then it was very derivative of every secret circle kind of thing that you've seen. But there's still pieces of it that I really am proud of, and we built a world. We figured out how to do world building, but that was now that I look back, I'm like, oh my god, it's so embarrassing that I asked people to read this.
No, that's amazing. That's what you do. You got to put yourself out there. And what was it in those 5 years that helped you go further and further away from journalism into the writing? Was she kept pulling you, or was it you being like, she's right, I got to do this? Or was it a mix of both?
It was a confidence thing, not about my writing, but about my worth and my voice, and whether I belonged at that, whether I deserve to sit at that cool kid's lunch table, honestly. It's that little thing inside of you being like, am I too loud? Am I too awkward? Do I not, am I less informed than I think I am? And what ended up happening over the course of that 5 years was I was really embraced, welcomed to the fold with the cast and the crew of the Vampire Diaries. And the reason that it made such a difference was because moving to LA was the first thing I'd ever done by myself. Mm-hmm. I had one friend here who, it was amazing, and I helped him get the job at the LA Times, just a great human being. Her name's Amy Kaufman, and now she's a huge big shot journalist at the LA Times. But I only had one friend, and I was really adrift and really nervous all the time. And then Julie started giving me access to the Vampire Diaries set when I was.
Was that in Georgia though, or did that move? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it was in Georgia. But as I was the same age as all those cast members.
Ian and
yeah, Ian. It was, Ian and Nina were so lovely to me, and Paul Wesley and Candace King now are still two of my closest friends. We just went to Ibiza together last year. Like,
that's amazing.
I know. but for me, it was like this moment of like, I'd go to set, I'd interview them, and then I'd be like getting ready to go back to my hotel, and somebody'd be like, "Hey, you want to come? We're gonna go play bocce ball and grab a drink. You want to come?" And I was like, "What? You want me to hang out with you?" And it seems like such a small thing, but like, I tell this story a lot, talking about Michael Trevino, who's on Roswell now. He's one of our actors on Roswell, and he was on Vampire Diaries. And the first day that I had ever set foot on a television set, I was so nervous. I'm like in the van going from base camp, which I didn't know was called base camp, to set.
With a bunch of people you don't know, and like just trying to.
Somebody's like, "Just grab a chair at Video Village," and I'm like, "What the fuck is Video Village?" And Michael Trevino had read a bunch of my articles that had been published in the LA Times. He's an LA kid, and he was reading the articles about the show, and he was like, "Are you Carina MacKenzie?" And I was like, "Yeah, did I do something wrong?" I'm like, "Oh God." And he was like, "No, I read your articles." And he could see how nervous I was. And we got to set, and he was like, "I've got some time. Do you want to take a walk?" And he showed me what Video Village was, and showed me craft service. And we walked around the set. And it was the first time I'd ever set foot on set. And I felt like, I don't know, man. I guess the story is when people are good to you.
Yeah, what an angel.
It makes such a difference. And then, it was really cool for me because, almost a decade later, he walked in to audition for Roswell, and I was like, "What the fuck are you doing auditioning? Please come do the show."
Yeah. He's one of the leads, right? He's the right?
Kyle, he's one of our series regulars, and it was funny. It wasn't even a moment of like, "Oh, you did something nice for me, let me do something nice for you." It was like, the attitude, the welcoming nature of that set, largely, established by Julie Plec, because that's what she expected of her cast. When a guest came to set, was kindness, and that kindness made me feel like I had a place in this world that I never dreamed that I would have a place in. But if Paul Wesley is inviting me to the cool Comic-Con after party after meeting me on set, then like, maybe I didn't say something stupid that day. Maybe what I said made people listen, and it seems it's small kindnesses add up. And by the end of my run as a journalist, and I really loved being a journalist. I was not like sad and pining for a better life.
Yeah, totally.
I really loved that gig. But I kind of like felt like I belonged there, and I had a safety net a little bit. Certainly not like financially or career-wise, but at least socially, I knew that I was going to walk onto set and people were going to be rooting for me. And that changed my life. I am grateful for it every day, and I try really hard to pay it forward.
Was Julie letting you in the writer's room? Like, did you get to come just sit?
No. I was like, I got in trouble a few times for like tweeting spoilers and stuff like that. Wow. It's a miracle that they like let me stick around. So as a journalist, because I was writing about TV, I couldn't just like go interview for jobs in writers' rooms. Like, it was very conflict of interesty, you know? And so Julie was like, "You've got to quit your job as a journalist if you want me to, if I want to interview you." They were spinning the Vampire Diaries off onto the original. So she had just gotten word this pilot was probably going to move forward into a TV show. And
that was the longest running CW show at the time, wasn't it?
Vampire Diaries was.
Yeah.
Oh, well, no. Supernatural forever.
Oh, Supernatural.
Uh,
Of course,
yeah.
Sheriff Pilecki. That dude.
It still isn't over. Like
Yeah.
they thought it was over, and then it's like coronavirus, and it's like guess it's staying.
Yeah, that's
But
amazing.
which by the way was my favorite show. Being on the Supernatural set was the coolest thing that I've ever done as a journalist, and I will.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that.
But yeah, Julie said you got to quit your job because none of us can interview you, because it was like one of those things where it's like, what if I go into interview to be the writer's assistant on the Vampire on the originals, and then they don't pick me, and then I go like write a shitty review of the show.
Yeah, I get that now. That makes sense.
There. And so I interviewed with Greg Berlanti and with Julie, both of whom have been like incredible champions of me throughout my entire career, which is insane to me because they're both big, very influential forces on Dawson's Creek, which was a thing. My dog's name is Pacey.
Amazing.
Julie offered me the job as writer's assistant on the original. So that's the foot in the door that I got. 5 years into my journalism career, eventually got the gig as assistant, and I will not lie, it was a very hard year as writer's assistant.
Just the learning curve of it all, or the intensity, or both?
The learning curve, sitting 3 feet away from where you really want to be sitting is really, really hard on your soul. Because you want to be seen, you want to be noticed so badly, you want to say something brilliant and pitch the idea, and like I would like pitch something and it would get through. Like a lot of things that I pitched in season 1 of the originals as writer's assistant actually made it to the screen. But Julie didn't know that was my pitch.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Mike Narducci, who was the showrunner at that time, he's getting so many things coming at him at once. He doesn't remember that I'm the one sitting in the corner that I'm like, that was my idea. Can somebody like tell me?
And they don't put that on the teleplay, right?
No.
Like this was great.
No.
Yeah.
I did have this incredible encyclopedic knowledge of the Vampire Diaries, because to write my reviews, I would watch each episode 3 times.
Wow.
And so, the writers of the originals would be like, okay, so then this person turns into a werewolf, and I'd be in the corner like, that's not how you turn a person into a werewolf. And I'd be like, can I borrow the mic, the marker for a second? Let me show you on this whiteboard how a person becomes a werewolf.
That's amazing.
And I had value in the room, but also as a writer's assistant, you're not supposed to talk that much. So I would sort of sit there and be like, when do I tell them that this is not the way you make a werewolf?
By season 3, they started giving you episodes to write, right?
Season 2, yeah.
Season 2, okay.
Sorry, that's wrong. I wrote my first episode in season 1.
Oh, you did? Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
Here's how that happened. I was a writer's assistant who got in trouble a lot. Like, the showrunner was frequently like, you need to talk less. Your job as a writer's assistant is to sit in the corner and write and take notes. And that was really hard for me because I had fought and worked really hard to feel like my voice had value.
Yeah, and then it's diminished in 1 second.
And the thing is, that wasn't him being shitty. That's just like the rule. Like as a writer's assistant, shut up and write. And take your notes, learn and learn and learn and learn and learn.
Yeah. And the AD doesn't tell an actor the intention in a scene.
Exactly. You learn. Just sit and learn. And I was having a really hard time doing that because I had gone through a lot to feel like I deserved to speak. And finding the humility was something that was honestly tough for me, and looking back, very tough for my showrunner. So I have a lot of respect for Mike Narducci for not like firing me on the spot. But over the Christmas break, he was writing a very difficult episode. It was episode 116 of the originals. And it was essentially a bottle episode where the 3 siblings get trapped in a cemetery together and have to sort of hash out 1,000 years of family drama. And he was having a tough time with it over the Christmas break. And I was in Australia with my family for the break. And I was on my computer like so much, like being like, no, remember, like, here's the thing that you need from this notes, and let me help you remember what we talked about in the room, and here's what you pitched, here's what you said. And I think when I came back from that break, he was like, you did a really good job, like you helped a lot, you're gonna get an episode this season. And it was like this incredible sense of relief, and like, all that time that I was sitting in the corner being like, please notice, please notice, please notice, finally I felt like I got noticed. And I wrote episode 120 with Julie Plec. We had to write it twice because the first version that we wrote, we had a focus on this character Cole, who's played by a guest star. He played one of the brothers of the main siblings.
Yeah.
And so we were going to bring him back to the show, do a whole episode about his backstory. So we wrote this whole Cole-centric episode. And then we found out that it was going to be airing the same night as an episode of Supernatural that was supposed to be a spinoff that starred the guy who played Cole. And so the CW was like, yeah, can you not do that on the same night? Can you do a different episode? And so I did throw that whole thing away and then start from scratch. And then I ultimately got to turn that episode into an 8-minute web series.
Amazing.
Yeah. Wow. But I'm still really proud of that episode. That episode still has, I think, the best line that I've ever written.
What is the line?
Haley asks Klaus, he's not even, why do you call him your father? He's not even your real dad. And Klaus says, because he's done damage that only a father can do.
Oh, David Simon levels there. Carina.
My dad's calling me like, are you okay?
That's
but that
amazing.
was my first episode of TV, and it was hard, and I got to, but like I said, I went to set for that, and it was a tough time on set. We had to do like a reshoot of a scene and all this, but when I got to set, I knew that I had people in my corner because I knew Joseph Morgan, the star of the show, from when I was a journalist, and I knew Phoebe Tonkin, the star of the show, from when I was a journalist, and I had my friend Eva McKenna was the producer's assistant that I knew from when I was a journalist, and she now works on Roswell with me. So like I had people that had my back, and I think that you can't undervalue that feeling, and I think it's something that we as an industry need to start talking about.
We need support, creative,
especially for people that are marginalized, minorities and people who need more support than somebody privileged like me needs. Like showing up for people is the first thing and the easiest thing, and somehow it's not getting done enough. And I think that if there's anything that I'm trying to do, it's like it doesn't matter how talented you are if nobody has your back. And so having people, when you find somebody talented, have their back, because
that's so beautiful.
The only way in.
And at this point, I know you guys had a long run there. Where did the Flash thing come from? Was that the CW just asking you for an episode, or?
No, I think Greg Berlanti reached out to me and was like, do you want to come do one? It was a tough time, and I feel comfortable saying it was a tough time in the long history of the Flash. Andrew Kreisberg was running the show. The writers weren't happy with the leadership over there. And so,
I've heard a lot of stuff about that show.
It was tough, and right now I think it's one of the best shows to work on the CW.
Michael Keaton's apparently about to do it, so it must be pretty good.
The movie, but Eric, the current showrunner is really changed the environment over there. But at the time, it wasn't the best place to be, and Greg kind of said, come do an episode of The Flash. And I was very eager to fill the time because we had just wrapped up a season of the originals. The originals, by the end, I think we were doing 16 episodes a season, maybe 13. But The Flash was still doing like 25. And it was also just cool. Like I had never written anything that wasn't the originals. So it was really exciting for me to get to go and write something new and different. I did the episode where Barry goes into the future and fights his future self. And I texted Grant Gustin, who I knew just through social circles, and I was like, I'm so sorry when you get this script, because you're in every single scene, and some scenes you're in twice. Some scenes you're playing both present and
he played future himself too?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
And he was in every single scene, and we would never do that to an actor on the originals, ever. And so and he was like, oh man, it's okay, I'm used to it. And I was like, seriously, this is hard. And so I'm very glad for Grant, because one, he's a phenomenal human being, and I want
Yeah.
him to be happy. But things have gotten a little easier for him on that show. I think not easy, but easier.
Touche. And
It
then
was
you
a
got
really cool experience.
you got 4 or 5 seasons out of the originals?
5, yeah,
5.
yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I
And so,
was writer's assistant for one, but I did get one episode in there.
and
By the end, I was a producer.
so by the end, did you feel really comfortable, in the medium and in that network and in just all of your capacities as a creative?
Yeah, I think I'm really lucky to have worked with Julie Plec for so long, because she is not a person who needs the power and control and credit. Like, she's very happy to teach someone else how to do her job and then let you do your job. So by the end, I was very comfortable as far as making decisions about the show, not having to call Julie every second from set to ask what she wanted. I was confident that I could put her vision on screen, which is what your job is when you're a staff writer or a producer, is to get the showrunner's vision onto the screen.
So going back to my earlier question, then, do you feel like by the end of the originals is when you found your voice?
Sort of. So after season 4 of the originals, I had a little bit of a panic attack because I was trying to write something else. I didn't have a sample. I didn't have a script that was this is my pilot.
Yeah.
You call it a sample in the business, where it's somebody wants to have a meeting with you and first they read your sample to figure out what your voice is. And I just hadn't written anything.
Sample meaning your take on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, or
that's a spec. Yeah, so that's one version. So that's one version of a sample.
Yeah.
But lately things have skewed more toward people want to read original work. So they want to read your pilot or your feature or your play.
Got it.
And I didn't have one, and I realized at the end of season 4 of the originals that I had gotten so obsessed with accurately mimicking Julie's voice and Michael Narducci's voice, who was the other showrunner of the originals at the time, that I had lost what made me sound like me. And so the way that I actually found my voice again was I took the online masterclass that Aaron Sorkin did.
Oh, the real, the ones on Instagram ads?
Yep, the ones on Instagram ads. I paid $99, and I did one class every day. I would do a class during my lunch break at the originals, and I was taking notes. I was doing the homework assignments. I was participating. I was really taking the class.
Yeah.
And it helped because it was Sorkin's voice is over here, Julie Plec's voice is over here, and I fell somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
So I was able to find my rhythms and my sarcasm and my on the originals we were writing about 1,000-year-old vampires. So it was a very antiquated and very flowery way of speaking, and I kind of had to shake myself out of that space. And then I wrote a pilot called Ordinary Noise, which was it's about the music industry.
Okay.
I don't want to talk about it too much because I'm still trying to get it made.
Oh, yeah. Please, because they got roadies so wrong. I don't know how Cameron Crowe could fuck up.
I still think it's the best thing I've ever written, and it took a lot of research. I talked to a lot of musicians. I talked to a lot of...
I was a roadie, so when you start casting that,
really?
I audition for that.
I love it. Yeah. And so that pilot then got sent out. Warner Brothers bought it, so Warner Brothers has the option, but we just haven't taken it anywhere yet.
And so then by that, did you get a development deal with Warner Brothers?
When I agreed to come back for the final season of the originals, I got a development deal with my originals deal. So I kind of at that point I had done an episode of The Flash. I was a little bit do I want to do the last season of the originals? Should I go and try to find my voice elsewhere? But Julie really wanted me to come back, and so the offer that Warner Brothers made me, I really couldn't refuse. So that is how I got Roswell, basically.
Because obviously that was a show in the 90s. Was that your idea, or was that theirs? It was theirs.
It was. So Roswell was in the 90s was adapted from a book series called Roswell High that Fox Studios owned.
Okay.
And Fox Studios let their ownership lapse, so they stopped renewing their option on it. And Kevin Brown, who was a producer on the original TV show, snapped up the rights to the books in 2017. and he brought them to Amblin, Steven Spielberg's company. And Amblin reached out to me.
Amazing.
And so it was like this very long sort of process. And I was like, oh, I don't like, at the time it was 2017. I was really on the heels of that 2016 election.
Yeah.
I was in this space of like, I want to write something that means something. Like, I was a little bit tired of teenage vampires, and I felt like the original Roswell books were really very vampire. Was like aliens instead of vampires, but it was the same kind of deal. And so I originally was like, I don't think this is my project.
Yeah.
But Julie, I owed Warner Brothers a pilot because I had that pilot deal built in. And Julie said, look, go in and pitch them the version that you would want to do. And at the very least, then they know who you are as a writer, and the next project that they bring to you or suggest to you, they will understand you better. It'll be closer. And I was like, okay. So I came up with this concept. I was like, all right, they're not in high school. They're all like pushing 30.
Yeah.
They're the lead was Latina in the books, but they had then whitewashed her for the 1999 series because it was 1999.
Of course.
And so I wanted her to be Latina, and at the time there was a lot of, not at the time, I mean still now,
hatred in the wall.
There was a lot of stuff at the time going on about like the Muslim ban, which I was obviously very invested in, and I felt like I could tell a story there. Yeah. So we made her the daughter of undocumented immigrants, and it was very political. The way that
I love the pilot.
And we thought that the CW was going to be like, thank you so much, so nice to see you. We're going to go with the person who wants to do the Twilight version.
The PC version of
the version that was like another Vampire Diaries. Like there's a version of Roswell that probably could have been this like crazy smash Riverdale hit. Yeah. And instead, they wanted to tell my story. They wanted to tell a story about America as it is now, and with this, extra bonus of also a UFO crash here.
Yeah,
I'm really grateful to them for that, because I think that they could have made a very splashy teen soap
and gone safe.
Yeah, and they not only have they really been supportive of my ideas and the bolder moves that I've made. Mostly, I fight my fights. I fight my battles.
Yeah, I understand.
I've won the ones that matter to me most. But they've also been very like they haven't put a lot of pressure on me as far as ratings go.
That's beautiful.
They're really cool at the CW, being like, look, the numbers aren't crazy when people watch live on TV, because
nobody watches live TV.
Live,
yeah.
And so they're much more concerned about streaming numbers and plus sevens, and so they've been really supportive of the show, even though the show was never like cover of Entertainment Weekly, like Nina Dobrev and Paul Wesley in a bed.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, well, that kind of era of television is pretty much done, because everyone's got. I mean, Yahoo's got a show. There's too much content. You know what I mean? It's insane. Yeah. But you told the story you wanted to tell.
I'm honestly very comfortable where we're at.
Yeah, you're doing a great job, and I want to come audition for the next season, because I love the show, and let me play an alien or something. Seriously, I want to work with you. You're a true artist.
That's
No, I mean every word of that.
And that's what I really want. I really want to be a place that people want to go, and I felt that on my first time that I went to set on the Vampire Diaries when I was 22, and I really want to create that feeling for other people. I never want people to feel like they're trapped on my show. And we work hard. Sometimes we shoot and we miss, but
no, I love it.
But it's a good place to work, hopefully.
That's beautiful. And you guys do have a third season, but it's probably held up because of the work. Yeah.
We were supposed to start shooting in July. We're supposed to be rolling camera about a month from right now. That's not gonna happen, I think. Even
though New Mexico is maybe open or not open.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really matter, because we're gonna work with the standards of the DGA and the WGA
and SAG and
Also, Santa Fe, we film in Santa Fe, and we love Santa Fe, and we're very like grateful to the local population. The last thing that I want to do is bring a bunch of Californian assholes to Santa Fe with coronavirus.
Right.
Um,
I
and
respect that.
so we're waiting to figure out what's safe for us, what's safe for the city, how to write the story so that the actors are safe as possible. If that means we're not doing as many kissing scenes this year, then that might just be what we have to do, because we have real people with real health to worry about.
Do you have everything pre-written, or do you write it as like?
Normally we write it as we go, sort of.
Yeah.
But this season we do have a little bit of advance, because we were expecting to go back in July and we're not. So we'll have more scripts written than we usually do when we start. That said, things are changing every day. So like we are writing a version of things, and then if rapid testing gets better, then we might get to change it. Or if there's another spike and things get worse, we might have to change it. Right. We don't know.
So at this point, you don't know if you're going to roll before 2020 ends.
We don't know for sure, but I'm pretty confident that we'll get back to work.
Amazing.
I'm pretty confident that we'll be back to work this fall. Probably around the end of September, beginning of October. It's more of a question of what are we going to shoot? Are we going to be able to
no extras, maybe all interiors?
Yeah. Exteriors are actually kind of safer right now.
Oh, really? Outside. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. Until we shoot in Santa Fe, it's a 7,000 foot elevation. There are blizzards. So, until it gets into winter, and then it's no longer safe to be outside. But yeah, we're gonna do our best to make it work, to give the audience a little bit of an escape from coronavirus without endangering our team. But I will say, it's one of the things that's sort of weird about becoming a showrunner is like somebody goes, this girl's a really good writer, let's put her in charge of 300 people. And those are not the same skill set. Being a good writer means I'm good alone in a room with my people.
I'm not a general.
And then managing 300 people is a very different skill set that you learn as you go. There's no other way to do it but to go. And so this is a new thing for me. Being in charge of people's safety was stressful in season 1 and 2. This is a new level of being in charge of people's safety that's scary, because it's not just if somebody, sorry, my dog. It's okay. If somebody slips and falls, they could get hurt and it's a disaster. It's like, this is now, if somebody slips and falls and then they go home and now their grandmother's going to slip and fall and their baby's going to slip and fall and everybody that they've met on the way is also going to slip and fall, and it's going to be my fault. And it's like a very, forget about the professional liability and the financial liability.
The human liability.
The emotional liability of that is a lot for me. So, we're going to shoot when it's safe. We're going to do our very, very best to keep everybody safe and to be entertaining, but we are going to first prioritize safety and entertainment second. And I think we'll find a way to do both. But,
I respect that. I truly love the show. And when you're writing those co-star guest stars, remember this face. But seriously.
Thank you so much.
I'm such a big fan. And I have so much respect for you, especially just how you've been able, like, your persistence and your willingness to be able to deal with all the things that were thrown your way and not get overwhelmed. I mean, that's a real. But you're a showrunner, Carina. You're crushing it. You know what I mean? There's so many people in there that could have. I mean, I really mean this, and it's not their fault, but there are people that don't get over the 9/11 mockery, that don't get over the college professor telling them they're never going to be funny. Those things really hurt. And how you were able to manifest those into a creative thing and stay persistent and to literally create is a coup. That's what artists do. You're an artist through and through.
More people helped me than hurt me. And that's what makes the difference. And I think that that's the responsibility that anybody who does achieve any kind of success in this industry, that's your responsibility, is to be the person that helps other people instead of hurting other people. So,
and have you since felt the need to pay it forward, if you will?
I think I hope I do. I have people that I feel like a mentor to. like I said, the Eva McKenna, who was a production assistant on the producer's assistant, I'm sorry, on the originals, was then my assistant on the pilot, and she's now executive story editor on Roswell. And you pull people up through the ranks as they earn their way up through the ranks. And I try really hard to be a good mentor. But like I said, I truly feel like I'm still learning as I go every single day and fucking up along the course. So you do your best, but
you fake it till you make it. You've made it.
One of our actors is going to direct this season, and
amazing.
We're trying to pull people and up the ranks and make sure that people get to chase the thing that makes them happy. So.
That's why I created this podcast. That's amazing. That's so beautiful. Well, can you talk about, I know you're so immersed in this. Is there anything else? Like, I know that other show you mentioned you're still trying, but is there anything else in the immediate future for Carina?
I've got 2 projects that I'm developing. One is my actual dream project that I don't want to talk about. It's
all right.
Scared someone else to do it first, but it is an adaptation of one of my favorite songs.
Okay.
I'm a big country music fan, and country music,
the
songs have a lot of narrative to them. So that's the first thing. And then I'm also working on developing an adaptation of a book. That's a super cool book set in England at a grad school, and it's really
very
dark.
Very normal people-esque, or
oh god, I wish. I did just write a sequel to Normal People on Twitter this morning. So if anybody
well, they did my show. Paul and Daisy are friends. They're great. I love them.
I just, what a show! What a dream show. It's sort of it's a little bit of a dark, I want to say it's
a pivot
thriller. It's different. They're both very different projects for me because there's no supernatural aspect, and they're not CW centric. They're definitely older projects, so we'll see if they go anywhere. But honestly, I will say, I don't have aspirations to be Greg Berlanti. I don't ever need to have a zillion shows because, and I love him so much. I have so much respect for him, and he had a huge influence on me as a kid and a huge influence on me now. But I don't need an empire, because the thing that I love and the thing that I have always loved is the writing part, literally sitting at my computer by myself in my room, writing a story. And the more shows you have, the less you actually get to write. And I just want to write.
That's
so I'm not looking to, one show at a time is fine for me. I'm not going to feel like I'm a failure if I don't have a long line of things to do. So
well, you're crushing it, and you do have a long line, and I'm so proud of you. And thanks. I know we just met, but I really am.
This was a really lovely conversation.
Yeah. Well, I'll see you in Roswell, I hope, or at least on a self-tape. But
listen, everybody, the self-tape is the norm now. We're not doing rooms anymore. So.
When you write a moderately attractive, brooding character, I'm your guy. But so final question, Carina. This is heavy, but please answer it in the way you can for the young Carinas out there that are, maybe still in Greenwich or are in college and don't feel appreciated by their professors and don't know whether to move to LA or New York. What advice would you give for them?
First of all, I think that if you want to be a writer, you have to move to LA.
You believe that?
I do.
Okay, I'm really glad to hear you say it. Do you mind answering why?
Yeah. In the end, unfortunately, it doesn't matter how talented you are. It matters until you know somebody.
Got it.
Because getting somebody to read your stuff is hard. And the first thing is getting somebody to read your stuff and then convincing them that you are somebody they want to spend 8 hours a day with for the next 6 months. Yeah. And writing TV happens in LA. LA isn't it's not where my heart is. Yeah. I'm here because
the business
this is where the work is. And luckily I've done shows that have taken me elsewhere. I spent a lot of time in Atlanta, now spend a lot of time in Santa Fe, spend a lot of time in Vancouver, Toronto, but the writing ultimately for all of those things happens here in LA. And I will say I think it's the biggest like gatekeeping thing as far as like it's expensive to move here, and not everybody has parents that can help them, and not everybody has a friend whose couch they can crash on.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something we need to do better in the industry, is to make it easier for people who might not be able to get here. Atlanta's an option now. Atlanta is becoming a little bit, thanks to Tyler Perry and you know the way that he's sort of
Pinewood Studios as well.
Hollywood.
Yeah.
Atlanta, we're calling it Hollywood now. But the way that he's kind of transformed that, I think that there's some writing opportunity there.
Yeah.
Not a lot though, because he mostly writes all of his own shit.
Yeah.
But really, you got to be in LA, and I think it sucks that you do, but you do. So that's, you know, the tough advice that I give a lot of kids is figure out a way, you know, and
you wouldn't say the same is true for actors though, right? Because there are these other pockets, Atlanta, Vancouver, like you can be in one of those and get the co-star, guest star, and work your way to an LA or New York.
Yeah, and there's like it's like regional, right? So like in Santa Fe, when we're hiring for like a smaller role and we're searching regionally, that includes like Austin and Dallas, and like we're not just looking in Santa Fe and Albuquerque.
Someone who can go local.
Right. Somebody who's, I mean, there's local, then there's regional, and regional is less expensive for us than flying somebody from, you know, LA, even though, but I think that writing wise, you got to get yourself in a room, and it sucks. But right now, I think that means getting to LA. It might change because of the way that Zoom is working and everything. Like, there might be a world in which I don't have to live in LA anymore, which will be great.
Yeah, you can live in Croatia.
I'll be in Canada so fast.
Love it.
But you know, that's part of it. That's the first piece of advice. The second piece of advice that I would give, sorry about my dog.
Oh, it's okay.
The second piece of advice that I would give is, and I say this all the time, but when you find your people, stay with them and build yourself a family and surround yourself with people who push you forward and lift you up and want you to be better and want you to be successful, and don't compare themselves to you.
Compare and despair.
My world changed when the Vampire Diaries family welcomed me in and made me feel like I belonged somewhere. And then my world changed again when, you know, my group of friends that I have now in LA, that, you know, outside of that, and it also including that, like, grew and solidified. And I surround myself now with people who make me feel like I should work harder and be better, but also make me feel really good about where I've come from, what I've done, and how hard I try. And that's made a big difference to me. I think that it's hard, you know, I don't want to say it's like harder in LA, because I don't really ascribe to the whole like people are fake in LA thing. I think people are fake everywhere because they're trying to be polite and you know, trying to get by. But I think that it's hard as a young adult to who's chasing something impossible, who's chasing something big and scary. I think it's hard to find people who not only like support you and believe in you when you're trying, but who also have your back once you get there. Because those are very different things. And I've been I don't want to say I've been lucky to find that, because it's work. Finding the right people to surround yourself is work. And losing, you know, not taking a step away from people who don't support you is work. And it's hard. And I think that's my biggest thing, is like, know your people. And then when you find them, just like fight for you know, what your family is. And that's never let me down.
That's so beautiful. Carina MacKenzie, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was an immense pleasure.
So much for having me.
We got to do it again. And hopefully we'll see you in Roswell, New Mexico.
I love that.
I got so much love for you, and seriously, keep doing what you're doing. I'm so excited to see for all that stuff.
I'm trying to.
Yeah.
The virus would just like ease up a little bit.
It's going to. It's going to. And I want to hear more about those other projects. When you're ready to talk about them, you come back here, okay?
Will do.
I got so much love for you, Carina.
I couldn't say more. I'm so scared other people are going to be like, I had that idea first.
It's okay. Well, it was vague. Don't worry. Nobody knows. All right, Carina. Hey, have a great week. And I got so much love for you, and happy 4th of July.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right.
All right. Should I actually leave?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay,
Thank you
cool.
so much.
All right. Thank you, guys.
All right.